Hello students, this is Leah Hepburn. This video discusses parenthetical references in the text. We're going to be talking about parenthetical references as they are developed by MLA documentation style. So a parenthetical reference should include enough information to guide your reader to a specific entry on your works cited list. And we'll cover works cited list in a different video. But your works cited list is a list of sources that you use in your paper, and it comes at the end of your essay. So your parenthetical reference is a guide to your works cited list. Typically, parenthetical references include the author's last name and page number. So here my example is, in parentheses, Gonzalez 63. So Gonzalez is the author's last name and 63 is the page number on which I found the information I'm using in my essay. If you use more than one work by the same author, include a shortened form of the title in the parenthetical reference. Here in my example, I have in parentheses Gonzalez, comma, the history of Laredo, 63. Notice that the parenthetical reference does not include a comma after the title or a P before the page number. Whenever possible, introduce information with a phrase that includes the author's last name, or the author's name. If you do this, include only the page number in parentheses. So my example here, according to Andrew Keene, the absence of professional reporters and editors leads to erroneous information on Wikipedia, and my parenthetical reference only includes the page number. Make sure to place documentation so that it does not interrupt the flow of your ideas, preferably at the end of a sentence. So here in my example, my documentation is at the end of the sentence. My parenthetical reference is at the end of the sentence. There are exceptions to the guidelines for parenthetical references. The format for parenthetical references departs from the guidelines in the following special situations. The first special situation is when you are citing a work by two authors. And here is the example. It is impossible to access all websites by means of a single search engine. Sherman and Price, 53. Sherman and Price are the last names of the two authors that wrote this text. And 53 is the page number on which I found that information about websites and single search engines. The second special situation is when you are citing a work without a listed author. Here's my example. The technology of wikis is important, but many users are not aware of it. 7 things. This parenthetical reference includes a shortened form of the title instead of the author's last name. So here, this is my parenthetical reference. There was no listed author, so instead of an author, I simply put an abbreviated version of the title of this article. The third special situation is when you are citing an indirect source. Here's my example. Marshall Poe notes that information on Wikipedia is, quote, not exactly expert knowledge. It's common knowledge, unquote. My parenthetical reference here, QTD, period, in, Keene 39. Keene is the last name of the author, 39 is the page number. If you use a statement by one author that is quoted in the work of another author, indicate this by including this abbreviation that you see here in the parentheses. So QTD, period, in stands for quoted in. In other words, Keene is the author of the source I'm using, but Marshall Poe is quoted in this author's source. The fourth special situation is when you are citing an electronic source with section numbers instead of page numbers. On its website, Wikipedia warns its writers and editors to inspect sources carefully when they make assertions that are not generally held in academic circles. The parenthetical reference here, there is no author, so I have the name of the article, which is verifiability. I have a comma. I abbreviate the word section, SEC, period, and then I have the section number. Sources from the internet or library databases sometimes do not contain page numbers. If the electronic source uses paragraphs, sections, or screen numbers, use abbreviations as necessary. So for paragraph, use the abbreviation PAR, period. Or for a section, SEC, period, as you see here in my example. Or the full word screen, followed by the corresponding number in your documentation. If the citation includes an author's name, place a comma after the name. The fifth special situation is when you are citing an electronic source without page numbers or markers of any kind. If the electronic source has no page numbers or markers of any kind, include just the names of the authors. Readers can tell that the citation refers to an electronic source when they consult your works cited list. So here's my example. A Wikipedia entry can be very deceptive, but some users may not realize that its information may not be reliable. And in parentheses here, I have just the author's last name, McHenry. Okay, so now that you know the guidelines for parenthetical citations, parenthetical references, let's talk about the guidelines for formatting your quotations. So there are two types of quotations, short quotations and long quotations. Here on the screen I have the formatting guidelines for short quotations. Quotations of no more than 4 typed lines are run with the text of your paper, meaning that you just continue typing inside of your essay with quotations that are 4 lines or less, fewer. End punctuation comes after the parenthetical reference, which follows the quotation marks. This means that your period goes after your parenthetical reference. And here's my example. According to Andrew Keene on Wikipedia, the voice of a high school kid has equal value to that of an Ivy League scholar of a trained profession. So I end my quotation mark here, and then I have my parenthetical reference, and then I have the period. For long quotations, it gets a little bit more complicated. Long quotations are defined as quotations of more than 4 typed lines within the text of your paper. So if your quotation goes on to a 5th line in your essay, then you need to format it differently. You need to format it as a long quotation. You may have heard of long quotations as block quotes. It's the same basic principles. So here, in a long quotation, you need to indent the quotation 1 inch from the left-hand margin, and you do not enclose the passage in quotation marks. Additionally, you have to introduce a long quotation with a colon and place the parenthetical reference 1 space after the end punctuation. In other words, the parenthetical reference comes after the period at the end of the sentence. Let's take a look at an example. According to Catherine Mangu Ward, Wikipedia has changed the world. Note the colon after introducing the quote. The part that's indented 1 inch here is not enclosed in quotation marks. However, this part right here is my quote. I know it's the quote because it's indented 1 inch. The whole quote is indented 1 whole inch. Wikipedia was born as an experiment in aggregating information, but the reason it works isn't that the world was clamoring for a new kind of encyclopedia. It took off because of the robust self-policing community it created. Despite its critics, it is transforming our everyday lives. As with Amazon, Google, and eBay, it is almost impossible to remember how much more circumscribed our world was before it existed. Period at the end here, and then my parenthetical reference. It's very different from a short quotation. Notice this ellipsis right here. An ellipsis indicates that the student has deleted words from the quotation. So the original source had more between this sentence, and therefore they need this ellipsis to indicate that they took things out.